Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Mark Hoffman, CEO and co-founder of Brain Trust. And today we have Mike Kirban, the co-founder and CEO of Vita Coco, joining us to in the first of what I hope will be a series where we can speak to a wide range of people who have gone on to achieve great success doing all sorts of different things despite their learning challenges. So Mike, I know you've had some difficulties in school growing up. So what are some of your early memories of what school was like as a child?
Yeah, no, and thanks for having me do this. I think it's really interesting. I think it's great. And yeah, it's not something I spend too much time talking about, but it's it is, I think, important, and it's important, for kids and for parents to understand that this is something that is, normal, right? It's not that abnormal. So, as a kid, I was, diagnosed, with several learning disabilities and ADHD, and it was challenging. I don't know, if it got better or worse after the diagnosis, because then there's like this thing. But I remember as a kid, before any sort of diagnosis, just being in class and the fear of my turn to read out loud. I can remember we'd sit in a circle and you'd go around the circle and every kid would have their turn to read out loud a piece of, whatever book you're reading. And I would just, I'd be in absolute fear until it would come to me, and then I would just black out. It was scary, and it's a horrible feeling. And it was kind of like you're being forced to show everybody how incapable you are of doing what they can do very, very well and very easily. So it was challenging.
And did you feel like once you got your diagnosis, you were able to access more support, so you were able to avoid those situations in school a little bit more?
Maybe avoid those situations. Definitely. It was a long time ago. This was in the 80s, and I would say they didn't know exactly. It was public school in Connecticut. They didn't know exactly how to deal with it. They kind of put all of the kids who had any sort of learning disability, at any range, into a room for half of the school day. And it was really kind of like playing with blocks and recess, and it was like everything mixed together. There wasn't any real structure to it. It was like, okay, take the kids out of the normal classrooms for half of their day and put them all together. And I don't even remember what we did in there. It was really strange. It was referred to as romper room. We all referred to it as romper room, which is horrible, but it was just like where we all went. And I think some kids had a tough time with it. I just went and hung out and, did whatever I did and got to not have to sit in class and avoid those type of situations that I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I think the support I got from my family was more important. And I think it's critical to this discussion, right? As you're dealing with parents of young kids, who have, of course, everybody has, high hopes for their kids and their education and their future and, and their careers and all these things. That creates a lot of stress, right? Especially for kids with learning disabilities. And I think it creates a lot of fear for parents of children with learning disabilities. And, I was very lucky. My parents, especially my dad, who I grew up with, was super supportive. And the way it was explained to me, I think looking back, is fascinating. It was not, oh, you're, worse at something or you have this problem. It was, you're a genius. It was seriously, looking back, it was really, you're a genius. You're way better at so many things than any of the other kids. You're smarter than the norm. Because you're so smart, your brain works a little bit differently, and therefore you have problems with these certain things, but you're so far advanced in so many other things. And so I thought I was a genius, and that's just the way it was. And, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, but I was a genius. And I think that created this sense of positivity and being comfortable with it that was incredibly important. And I think that would be what I would recommend to any parent. It's about just instilling confidence in your kid, and they don't have to do everything the way other people do them to be successful, right?
And, you know, given the prevalence of learning disabilities, I mean, it impacts 1 in 5 kids. That's 20% of the students in the country. It's so common. And I think that perspective that you are really smart and your learning disability is in no way a definition of your intelligence or your potential. It's just that you learn differently and you need a different approach in order to learn to overcome these things that are challenging for you, is such an important perspective for instilling that confidence. So
it's very important.
Kudos to your dad. Did you have any teachers that reinforced that same message or that were, you know, a good advocate for you?
Not really. I mean, there were a few along the way that really, you know, supported me and got it and, you know, and were, you know, helpful. For the most part, the few that understood me, I actually did very well in their classes. You know, it was funny. It's like I didn't do well in school in general, but the few teachers that really understood me, I did well and I learned a lot. And those are some of the only memories I have from you know, elementary school at least and middle school. So it was you know, but they were far and few between.
Hopefully we do a better job now.
I think these days, I think it's totally different. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did the way in which you learned and the things that you were good at and the things that were hard for you help to, you know, define this unique career path that you have taken? Because, you know, I think for a lot of parents, when you see a child who struggles so much with reading and writing, which is such a huge part of daily existence, it seems like there's sort of the possibilities for professional life sometimes seem really, really limited. And I think that you have obviously proven that that is not the case. So what do you think was instrumental for you in being able to, you know, build all that you've built?
Yeah, I think, for one, outside of the house, outside of, you know, my family, there was a lot of, you know, there were a lot of people who just expected me to fail, and I failed a lot. And that was okay. You know, I didn't come home and get yelled at because I got a bad grade. I didn't have a lot of pressure to do incredibly well in school. You know, I had pressure to do the right things and to, you know, to be a good person. And I think that was much more important. And I think failing quite a bit or being expected to fail by people who just don't get you gave me a lot of confidence. And it gave me this, like, I have this weird, you know, no, I don't want to fail, but I have this weird feeling of like, okay, if I fail, I'll just do this. Or if I fail at that, I'll do that. Or I'll find a way to create. And I think that's an incredibly effective tool for an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. As I've started businesses, like having those businesses not being successful was never even something that crossed my mind as a reason not to do it. That actually, you know, gave me a huge leg up as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I listened to one of your interviews recently, and when you were talking about like organizing those parties in high school and sort of like an early hustle, you know, I think that seems pretty intimidating in a lot of ways.
Right, to me.
Yeah.
And to me, it wasn't. And there was always a solution, right? If there's a problem, the police come, there's a solution. Make friends with the police.
I like forced thinking outside of the box, and I think developing that grit is something that we try and instill in students all the time, of just this idea of the growth mindset, that anything is always possible and mistakes are an opportunity for learning and a really kind of good thing overall. But I think overcoming the hump to actually accept that inside is hard.
Yeah, but you can, it's valuable.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of, you know, your challenges with academics and reading and writing, what are some of the strategies you use today to manage your business that, you know, enable you to not be dependent on those things or allow them to get in your way, because, you know, life works on emails and written communications and all of those things. But,
yeah. So first, I'd like to start by thanking Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, because without them, I'd be homeless. I mean, spell check and the technology today just allows you to do so many things that you couldn't do, that I couldn't do, you know, without them. But I think for me, I'm much better in person, for example, than I am in written communication, even though there's spell check and there's, you know, and I can read an email 5 times. I'll still to this day, even though I think I've, you know, overcome a lot of the problems I had learning as a kid, I'll still, you know, I need to reread emails many times before I send them, this type of thing. So for me, in person is something that just works better, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, thanks to Zoom and apps like this, you know, I could still have those type of experiences even during COVID and then, you know, during lockdown. But always for me, I'm in a better place in person. So I know that. So I try to, you know, use that to my advantage. No, I think also just I just don't have an incredible attention to detail. And, you know, I think that comes from a lot of these same places. And so I know that. And so I try to overcome that by surrounding myself sometimes with people who have an incredible attention to detail. And that makes me better. Right. And I think as a business owner and as a CEO, that's one thing that I've always, you know, managed to do, I think very well, is put the right complements around me, so that we can, you know, be better.
Yeah. And I think that awareness of strengths and challenges is, you know, if you can understand that at a young age and be able to make critical decisions based on that awareness, it helps you to avoid all of those things that are so hard for you, because you can use the things that you're really good at to compensate. So, you know, another message we try and instill in kids from a young age. And I think it's great for parents to be able to highlight that for their kids as well, which it sounds like your dad did an amazing job of.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so looking back, if you were to try and give some words of wisdom to your younger self, who was maybe frustrated in the romper room and terrified of having to read out loud, you know, what would you say to help students that might be in a similar situation now sort of identify that these disabilities do not define them and in no way, shape, or form are you know, a predictor of their future success and achievements, because school is hard for them, but the world will be easier.
That's right. I think that's a good one right there. I think it's also, you know, believe in yourself and don't necessarily, you know, like just listen to the noise around you. You know, as a kid, I mean, kids will pick on kids for not being able to read at a certain age and stuff like that. And you just, like, as a kid, I know it's hard to just say, okay, shut that out. But if you as a parent, if one as a parent can instill enough confidence in a child that they can do that, that's powerful.
Yeah.
You know, because kids can be cruel. People can be cruel, right? And if one is confident enough to be able to, shut that out and believe in themselves, it allows, you know, so much opportunity. And so.
Yeah. And what about if you were to speak to parents who are totally freaked out and overwhelmed watching their child struggle and worrying about what that means for their child's future success and, you know, what they're going to be able to do with their life, what would you say to those parents out there?
Chill the hell out. Like, I mean, seriously, you know, I see it in my own household, you know, and I see it within the community. I mean, parents these days are, you know, super on top of things and paranoid about everything, especially in a place like New York, where we are. And I think parents just need to chill out and learn to, you know, work with their kids as opposed to applying pressure. Pressure doesn't work. You know, pressure to work hard is great, to an extent, but I think it's about chilling the hell out, and this isn't the end of the world, and it's not that big of a deal, and it doesn't define your child's entire future.
Yeah.
I think that's really, something that parents need to kind of just breathe and chill.
Yeah, that was my thinking with this entire series, to title it "It'll All Be Okay."
It's great. It's perfect.
It will all be okay.
All be okay.
Yeah, it feels like the end of the world now, and sort of this impossibly difficult thing. But I think you understand, we all understand, if 20% of the people in this country struggle with a learning disability or ADHD, they all go on to achieve, or many or most go on to achieve really great things. That perspective is important.
Yeah, no, I agree. So
yeah.
That's good.
Awesome. I'll be okay.
Yes, it will all be okay.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And
anytime. This was fun.
Share perspective. It's great to hear.
Great to talk to you. Thanks for having me. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.